The god of high school begins by showing three men relaxing on the beach on a deserted island. They plan to blackmail a man named Park Moojin, a politician of the South Korean National Assembly. However, a strange phenomenon occurred suddenly on the island where they stayed, where the seawater receded, and strong winds hit the area. Unexpectedly, something mysterious suddenly came from above the sky and directly hit them. The scene then switches and shows Park Moojin preparing for the upcoming God of High School martial arts tournament. In another place, a 17-year-old boy named Jin Mori wakes up from sleep after dreaming about his grandfather, who advised him to study hard and have many friends. Mori then saw a photo of himself with his grandfather and realized that he had woken up late. He rushed off on his bicycle because he didn't want to be late for the preliminary tournament. On the way, Mori almost hit an old woman, but he managed to avoid an unwanted accident. But then, he was almost hit by a motorcyclist who had just stolen the old woman's wallet. Mori was trying to help the old woman by chasing the thief. During the chase, he accidentally bumps into a girl named Yumi Ra, who then pursues him because she wants to ask about his responsibility. But after learning that he was chasing a thief, she finally helped. When they almost lost track of the thief, a young man named Han Daiwi appeared in front of the thief and immediately knocked him down. Mori and Mira seemed impressed by his strength. Because they will be participating in the preliminary tournament, the three of them decided to go together to the tournament's location. When they got there, they saw that so many participants would participate in the preliminary tournament because the God of High School martial arts tournament was the country's most famous martial arts fighting event. At the tournament, it is explained that fighters can use any martial art, bare fist, or weapons. The winner will be determined if they manages to defeat the opponent or make the opponent surrender, and whoever wins the tournament, then the request will be granted. The fighters are injected with nanomachines to monitor their vitals and heal injuries so they can fight harder. Then, the announcer declares the fights will not be paired duels but a mass brawl. Many fighters are defeated easily, but not so Mori, Mira, and Daiwi, who could survive and defeat the other fighters. After successfully defeating several opponents, Mori turned to the top stands, where two men observed the tournament. Seeing the blonde-haired man, he said he would win the tournament to avenge the blonde-haired man. The battle became even more heated when the commissioners presented a man named Kong Monsuk, a super strong martial artist who fights only with his feet due to his wrists being handcuffed. Monsuk can easily beat the other participants. However, he gets excited when he faces Mori, who moves fast enough to avoid injury and even damages one of Monsuk's ankles. When Mori is about to fight Monsuk one-on-one, Mira suddenly snaps his neck to retrieve her wooden sword. At the same time, today's battle was declared over, and medics immediately entered the battle arena to heal the injured fighters. After that, Mori, Mira, and Daiwi walk home together because they are in the same direction. Mori then asked why Mira and Daiwi joined the God of High School martial arts tournament. He tells them that he entered the tournament for a rematch with the commissioner who scouted him, which is none other than the blonde-haired guy. Daiwi tells them he wants money to pay his friend Wo Seung Tai's medical bills. Meanwhile, Mira seeks a suitable husband, so she can save her family's sword style by passing it to her children. After that, Mori accidentally dropped Mira's wooden sword into the river. She felt annoyed, then slapped him and threw herself into the river to look for her sword. Her childhood memories suddenly appeared and reaffirmed her determination to revive her family's dojo. Not long after, Mori and Daiwi came there with flashlights to help Mira find her wooden sword. In the next fight, Mori seems to have arrived at the location earlier and decides to take a nap. But then, Monsuk arrives there and intends to attack him. A man named Go Gumdo tried to stop Monsuk, but he was affected instead. Mori, who heard the fuss, finally woke up and helped Gumdo. The participants will duel individually in this fight, and the winner will advance to the next round. Mori, Mira, and Daiwi managed to win their respective battles and advance to the next round. On the other hand, it turns out that Gumdo is facing Monsuk and must defeat him if he wants to advance to the next round. Before entering the battle arena, Gumdo thanked Mori for helping him, and Mori encouraged him to win the fight. The battle between Gumdo and Monsuk was fierce. As a Tai Chi user, Gumdo can make Monsuk thrown out of the battle arena with one attack. However, Monsuk then gets up, launches a barrage of attacks at him, and demands he beg for mercy. Annoyed to see this, Mori entered the battle arena and saved Gumdo before Monsuk killed him. However, Mori's action was considered a violation, so the commissioners immediately stopped him. On the other hand, Monsuk got up with an aura of power far more terrifying than before. The commissioners prepare to face Monsuk, who looks like he will attack anyone who stands before him. Not just standing still, Mori then attacked Monsuk with his flagship Taekwondo technique and was able to easily defeat him. But then, he was instantly knocked down by the energy beam released by Park Moojin through his palm. As the chief manager of the tournament, Moojin said that the fight would continue while they discussed the punishment that would be imposed on Mori for the offense he had committed. The scene then switches and shows a group of people who are members of a mysterious cult called Nox, where they are monitoring an ongoing tournament through radio broadcast. Elsewhere, Gumdo seems unable to participate in the tournament anymore due to being badly injured by Monsuk's fatal attack. Likewise, Monsuk seems to have suffered a severe mental illness after being defeated by Mori. The commissioners decided to eliminate Monsuk and Gumdo from the tournament. The commissioners wanted to disqualify Mori because he had committed a serious offense. However, after Mujin discovered that Mori's grandfather was Jin Tai-jin, Mujin asked them to suspend Mori's sentence. In the tournament's next round, Mira will face Mami Soon, an American female. Mira reveals that her family martial art includes swordless style, which can slice flesh using only fingers. Even though it was quite difficult to fight Misoon until she was battered, Mira finally managed to beat her by a landslide and advanced to the next round. After that, Mujin told Mori that he could stay in the tournament if he defeated one of the commissioner, a man named Q, in a fight. Mori immediately agreed to the terms, even though Q was not the commissioner he wanted to beat. Before leaving, Mujin presented Mori with a bag of peaches. That night, Mori eats the peaches Mujin gave him and immediately vomits blood as it is not a normal peach. The next day, Daiwi was seen visiting his friend, Soon-tai, who was being treated at the hospital. Soon-tai told him that he would try a new, more expensive treatment. Because of that, Daiwi is increasingly determined to win the tournament. In this fight, Daiwi will face a young man named Bak Suncho, who fights with a baseball bat. Despite painful damage to his organs, he destroys his bat, knocks Suncho unconscious, and eventually defeats him. Meanwhile, Mori, lying unconscious in his house after eating a peach given by Mujin, which caused him to vomit blood, then woke up and rushed to the battle arena. Mori is told that he will win if he can push the commissioner to the floor. Then when the commissioner mocks him, he easily pushes him down. However, Q becomes furious and activates his Charyak and summons a clown-like spirit to kill Mori, only stopping after being restrained by his fellow commissioners. Charyak is a supernatural power obtained by someone through borrowing power. Mujin then entered the battle arena and determined Mori as the winner, which indicated that he would return to compete in the tournament. Then, Mira is approached by Sunjin, a martial artist and businessman who asks her to marry him, promising he can make her sword style world famous. Unexpectedly, Mira withdraws from the tournament, angering Mori, who criticizes her for treating marriage like a business arrangement, and becomes convinced Sunjin has an upper motive. Mira's uncle then asks Sunjin to end the engagement for Mira's happiness, but she insists they will continue the marriage. As Mori expected, Sunjin has an ulterior motive to marry her. Sunjin turns out to be a cult member who was ordered to marry Mira to obtain her moonlight sword style, believed to be capable of defeating God. Mira is convinced not to waste the effort she already put into saving her sword style and eventually cancels the wedding. Enraged, Sunjin admits he only wanted Mira's moonlight sword and summons a samurai spirit to kill them, managing to escape with Mira's wooden sword. Mira is unconcerned and decides to re-enter the tournament without it. Sometime later, Daiwi is devastated when he finds out that Soon-tai's health is deteriorating. Because of his unstable emotions, he snaps and assaults several bullies who routinely harass him at work. During his match against Mira, Daiwi wins by savagely beating the swordless Mira unconscious and promising to defeat Mori in the finals. On the other hand, Mori defeats his next opponent and will face Daiwi in the finals. In the hospital, Mira urges Mori to fight Daiwi for the right reasons, not for revenge. When their match finally started, Daiwi and Mori, who both had pretty great fighting skills, put all their strength into defeating each other. Mori knocks Daiwi down and tries to show him mercy instead of revenge, but Daiwi takes advantage, claiming that he was never really their friend, and unleashes a devastating attack. Meanwhile, Mira accidentally enters Soon-tai's treatment room at the hospital and finds his family grieving because he has died. Back in the battle arena, Daiwi managed to bring down Mori. However, when the referee started the countdown, Mujin, who had promised to heal Soon-tai if Daiwi won, told him that Soon-tai was dead, hoping to take him down. Upon hearing that, Daiwi flashes back through his entire friendship with Soon-tai and decides to lose the match. But then, Mira arrived there and then interrupted the match. She then gave a farewell letter that Soon-tai wrote to Daiwi, stating that he should fight for himself, not others. Daiwi returns to the fight with renewed determination and rediscovers his friendship with Mori. After a fierce battle between them, Mori dealt the final blow to him and managed to win the fight. The scene then switches to the past, when Mori's grandfather, Jin Tai-jin, refused to join the Nox sect. That's why they call their god to capture him. At the present day, Mori is Seoul's regional champion and can compete in the national tournament with a team of the regional's strongest 3 fighters. Mira defeats her next opponent and makes her the 3rd fighter beside Mori and Daiwi. Mujin and the commissioners found out about the Nox sect and their actions, which were quite worrying because Nox might cause chaos during the tournament. Because of that, Mujin called out the Six, a group of people who are the highest level masters of their own fighting styles. While shopping, Mira meets the tournament announcer, Simbongsa, with his family. She realizes that he is actually blind. He advises her to channel her feelings into her sword, to find the true strength of Moonlight Style, revealing it was Moonlight Style that blinded him. As Bongsa leaves, he is approached by someone wearing a bunny clown costume. The next day, when Mori and his friends headed to the National Martial Arts Tournament location, they watched the news about the death of Bongsa, suspected of being a murder victim. In the first battle, Mori's team will face the North Chungcheong regional champions. Mori uses acupressure techniques on his body, hoping to increase his strength, but accidentally paralyzes himself and loses to his opponent. However, Daiwi and Mira manage to win their battle, so Mori's team managed to advance to the next round. On the other hand, the Nox sect secretly began to launch its attacks. After killing Bongsa, Nox's assassins then ambushed Q in his apartment. When Q was almost pressed by their attacks, one of his friends came to his aid. Outmatched by Q and his friend, two of them managed to flee while one of the assassins sets off an explosion from his own body that destroys the top of the building. Turning to the martial arts tournament arena, everyone was shocked when they saw one of the fighters, a young man named Tak Jegal, using his Charyak and summons Megalodon to brutally bite and rip his opponent. Daiwi intervenes in the match but fails to stop him from claiming a sadistically violent victory. Seeing Jegal's abilities, Mujin assumed he might be the key they had been looking for. The key is the target of the Nox sect because they have ambitions to get the power of God owned by the key. The next day, Mori is surprised by the appearance of a young man named Park Ilpio wearing a jacket, which is exactly like his grandfather's. The tiger symbol on the jacket reminded Mori of his grandfather. However, Mori did not necessarily believe it just like that. Moreover, he knows his grandfather well and will not die that easily. One of the reasons he joined the God of High School Martial Arts Tournament was because he wanted to find his grandfather. When Mori was relaxing somewhere, Park Ilpio came to see him and told him that he was a fan of Mori. But then, he instead challenges Mori to a fight, where he demonstrates his ability in Taekyon, a traditional Korean martial art. Ilpio then told about his meeting with Mori's grandfather, Jin Tai-jin, who gave him a Taekyon training manual book written by Ilpio's deceased grandfather. Ilpio said that the tiger symbol on his jacket was a form of respect for Jin Tai-jin, who wore a military jacket with the same symbol at that time. In the middle of their conversation, suddenly, Jegal appeared and immediately attacked Mori with his Megalodon. However, Ilpio managed to withstand his attack and asked him not to hurt others. Elsewhere, Q is seen visiting Mujin and looks furious when he finds out that Bongsa and his family were killed by Nox. However, one of the commissioners, a woman nicknamed P, explained that Bongsa's wife and child were still alive and in a safe place, whereas the ones killed by Nox were their clones. After that, Q accidentally met Daiwi in front of the restaurant where he worked part-time. Because he had no more money after his salary was cut, Q became very hungry, so Daiwi offered him a free meal. Upon learning that Q is a Charyak user, Daiwi offers him one free meal daily in exchange for Charyak training. He did this on purpose so that he could become stronger so that Mori and Mira could rely on him, and he could protect them. On the other hand, Mori looks frustrated because he misses his grandfather. Even though he is very sure that his grandfather is still alive, he is still worried about his grandfather's safety. He was determined to become stronger so he could find his grandfather. Mori never thought that Mira and Daiwi knew his birthday. They celebrated Mori's birthday by eating together in a happy atmosphere. Mori seems happy because he could finally celebrate his birthday with his friends for the first time in his life. Before the next round of matches started, Mujin gathered the commissioners to inform them about Nox, who might have infiltrated the tournament. He gave the commissioners permission to use the full power of their Charyak to prevent Nox from assassinating the key because they needed it to defeat God. Elsewhere, the members of the Nox cult are preparing to infiltrate the God of School tournament, where they plan to kill the key. The following day, Mori gets an anonymous letter showing a photo of his grandfather being held hostage and his whereabouts. He rushed there without telling his friends and tried to get back in time before the quarter-final match began. Mori finally arrived at the abandoned warehouse, where the grandfather was supposed to be. After walking around the place for a while, he finally found his grandfather. But it turned out to be a trap, and Nox was the mastermind behind all of this. Nox had infiltrated the tournament using a copycat technique to disguise themselves as one of the teams against Mori's team. Meanwhile, in the match, Mira seems to have a hard time facing her opponent, a man named Lee Marin, who turns out to be a Nox member in disguise. On the other hand, Mori meets a Nox member, Fei Long, who reveals that he is killing weaker fighters like him to locate the key faster and that he uses the Charyak doppelganger to create clones. He is overwhelmed by the clones until Long reveals that Lee Marin and his team are dead and replaced by Nox cultists disguised using doppelganger. Furious, Mori then uses an acupressure technique to make him temporarily immune to pain. Meanwhile, Marin manages to knock Mira down in the match with a fatal attack. However, she refuses to just give up because she has the determination to win the tournament with Mori and Daiwi. She then got a flash of divine inspiration, granting her the Charyak Lu Bu Feng Xian, a Chinese military general and warlord. After regaining the ownership of the Feng Xian sword, Mira finally managed to defeat Marin. Shortly afterward, Mori finally arrived at the battle arena, which indicated that he had defeated Fei Long. He looks angry when facing his opponent, who is a member of Nox, and does not hesitate to launch a barrage of attacks at him. In this battle, we will be shown how Mori fights Fei Long and manages to defeat him. He then finished the fight with a fatal attack from his mainstay moves. After Mori's team won the battle, Mugen called them to his room, where he told them about Nox. Mugen informs Mori and his friends that Nox worship a single god and plans to murder all other gods and Charyak users. Nox was eyeing Jin Tai Jin because he possessed tremendous power, capable of rivaling their god. Mori's team managed to advance to the semi-finals and face Ilpio's team. In the first match, Daiwi finally defeated his opponent after a fairly fierce battle. Ilpio's former teammate then comes there and tells him to fight for himself, not for others. After receiving full support from his teammates, Ilpio entered the battle arena with confidence. In this battle, he will face Mori, which he has been waiting for a long time. Elsewhere, Mugen confronts Sang Monduk, a high-ranking Nox cultist who manages to infiltrate the tournament arena. Monduk apparently planned to destroy the key, even in front of his appearance. While the other sect members had gathered outside the arena to do their plan, Monduk used his powers to release a Nephilim and summon his god. However, Mugen was already anticipating an attack from Nox. He had ordered the commissioners to confront the members of the Nox sect and asked one of the 6 members named Suhanryong to destroy the Nephilim. As Mori and Ilpio's fight gets fiercer, the battle between Mugen and his subordinates against Nox gets hotter. Eventually, Mori manages to overcome his weaknesses by copying the fighting styles of both Mira and Daiwi. He defeats Ilpio, who remembers his promise to Tai Jin that he would help Mori grow as a fighter if he ever had the chance. At the same time, Suhanryong manages to destroy the Nephilim with his national treasure weapons to protect the arena. When Ilpio is about to be defeated, he suddenly receives divine inspiration from his Charyak, Nine-Tails Guardian, and awakens a new power. All Charyak users feel the awakening of Nine-Tails and instinctively fear it, except Monduk, who happily declares the key has finally awoken. Thousands of years ago, the Nine-Tailed Guardian was betrayed by Jade Emperor and other gods. After destroying half of heaven, fled to Earth and swore revenge. After sleeping for so long, the Nine-Tails Fox finally revived with full strength and chose Ilpio as the one to receive his grant. Ilpio becomes difficult to beat after gaining strength from his Charyak, where he then launches a barrage of attacks at Mori, which then corners him. When Mori was almost lost, a flash of his past memory suddenly flashed through his mind, which then awakened the great power hidden within him. I don't know what kind of power Mori has, but he can easily defeat Ilpio, which indicates that he is much stronger than the key. After that, Mori visits Ilpio at the hospital and informs him that his grandfather has been missing for a long time. Because of that, Mori was determined to win the God of High School tournament because he had been promised to get information about his grandfather if he succeeded in becoming the champion. After telling everything, Mori said goodbye and rushed out of Ilpio's treatment room, which was heavily guarded because he was the key. Then, Jun Jugok, who lost his Charyak, Mage, after being defeated by Jegal, gains a new Charyak from Monduk, Greed, that allows him to absorb other people to increase his strength. Jugok, who happened to be in the same hospital as Ilpio, got into a fierce battle with Jegal, who then used his Charyak, Megalodon, to bite him in half and kill him. However, due to their fight, Ilpio's teammates lose their hands and feet, so Ilpio becomes furious and attacks Jegal. Elsewhere, Monduk opens his god's summoning portal, allowing an army of creatures to appear. Monduk calls forth God Incarnate to destroy the entirety of the world. With the creatures approaching the city, Mugen declares the God of High School tournament officially over. In the past, Jegal's mother pawned him off to the chairman of the large company, JG Group, to clear up her debt when he was just a child. His new father raised him with might is right philosophy, stating that family and love can only be achieved by those with power and money, and those who don't have them are losers. That's why Jegal viewed himself as a winner who could do whatever he wanted to everyone else because they were all losers. Back to the present, Jegal is still involved in a fierce battle against Ilpio, who has now grown in strength since becoming the key. Elsewhere, the commissioners seem overwhelmed by the army of creatures released by Monduk. At the same time, Mugen tries hard to withstand the attacks of Monduk, who intends to destroy the world by bringing God's power through a giant statue. On the other hand, Ilpio and Jegal's fight got heated up, and Jegal finally managed to get the key out of Ilpio's body, so he lost his Charyak from Ninetails Fox. Knowing that it was so important because Jegal and the 6 members were trying to get it, Mori rushed to grab the key from Monduk, who was after him. Elsewhere, the United States military detects a threat that will endanger the safety of mankind in the skies of Seoul, so they immediately deploy hundreds of missiles to stop the attack from Monduk's God Gate. Mujin, who realized they were in a precarious situation and couldn't let the key fall into Monduk's hands, sent Mori and the others to the spirit realm. Meanwhile, the Seoul city government declared a state of emergency and tried to evacuate all residents to a safe place. However, in a state of panic due to the chaos that was happening everywhere, the traffic situation got out of control and instead caused a long traffic jam. On the other hand, Mujin looks so overwhelmed with holding back the divine power released by Monduk that he almost collapses. Su Hanryong then came to help him. However, the two of them could not withstand God's power even by combining forces until the barrier was completely shattered. However, when they almost lost hope, one of the 6, an old man named Jun Jae-san, arrives and teleports all residents of Seoul except for himself and Monduk all the way to Gangwon-dao. Trapping the city within a giant barrier, Jae-san then transformed the nuclear missiles launched by the USA to make a giant alchemic bomb which he hammers onto the Nephilim summoned by Monduk with a giant meteor. In another place, Mori and his friends seem confused because they suddenly changed places after Mujin used his power on them. However, Jegal apparently moved places, so Mori and his friends had to deal with Jegal, who had ambitions to get the key. During their fight, suddenly, there was a big explosion whose light was very blinding, and when Mori and his friends opened their eyes, they realized they had all returned to Seoul. He and the others looked surprised to see Monduk's Nephilim have been destroyed and wonder who is capable of doing all that. But then, he caught his guard, so Jegal managed to catch him and snatch the key from him. The key is consumed by Jegal and all bear witness to his ascension. After consuming the key, Jegal transcends his mortal body and becomes a god. He begins to ambush Jin Mori and his friends, threatening to destroy everything in his way. However, Mori's memory is triggered, and he remembers his true identity, that he is actually the great god Sun Wukong or the Monkey King. Despite not remembering many details of his life before becoming immortal, he jumps into action and summons his Rui Jingu staff to fight Jegal. The Monkey King gets in several punches and even drops constant lightning strikes using his power to call the Nimbus Clouds. This enraged Jegal and transforms him into a monster-like appearance. Mori's friends then join in the fight, and they manage to defeat Jegal. Sometime later, an old woman named Kim Eun-neo, the 6th founder, arrives and congratulates the group for completing the tournament. Eun-neo then offers them a chance to have one wish granted. Mori initially wants to wish for his grandfather, but he remembers Ilpio's friends are missing limbs. He then unselfishly wishes for them to be healed. Afterward, Eun-neo tells Mori that his grandfather is still alive. Upon hearing that, he finally lost consciousness due to the battle. Mori wakes 3 months later, and Dai-Wei and Mira inform him that they must travel to the Monkey King's original place to recover his memories as a god. The moral that can be learned from this anime is that strength does not come from winning. Our struggles develop our strengths. When we go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is strength. Not only that, but unity is a strength because when there is teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved.